Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you here to the Prog Monster here on this rainy evening, on a Thursday evening. I promise I did not know this was going to happen. It's coming down pretty good here. Welcome, Grandizer, to the Prog Monster. So today we're doing a Hammer of the Gods again. It's a metal show that I've attempting to start up here. Originally, it was just going to talk about Ozzy and Black Sabbath, but everybody's doing that right now, and I'm okay with that. That's great. I've watched a lot of it, and today we're just going to talk about the big three of heavy metal. Are these the first three heavy metal bands? I don't know. Are they the big three of heavy metal? I don't know. Certainly, I kind of think of them as the proto metal bands, the ones that started it. Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, and Led Zeppelin. When I was younger, they were the kind of the heavy bands. That's what everybody thought. We called them the heavy metal bands. But of course, they're kind of tame compared to some metal bands now, I guess. So in the late 60s, I'm thinking that's probably when it started. Yeah, I was okay. Ozzy's always been to me, a comedian. I always liked his comedical act. I never really thought of him as a rock star. I thought of him more of as a comedian. Although, yeah, that's what he's known for, his rock music. No two ways about that. But yeah, I wasn't getting choked up. A little bit shocked by it. I wasn't expecting it. Wasn't, because he had just done that concert with the other guys. Not even, maybe a little more than a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't expect that to happen so quickly. But it's hard to know how far somebody's Parkinson's disease is developed when you don't see them all the time. You only see them when they're in front of you, right? So I had a friend who was 88, passed of Parkinson's disease, and it's not the best of ways to go, but people go, right? That's the way they go. Yeah. So for me, Ozzy, I always think of Ozzy as more of a comedian, just his antics alone and the things he says. I just thought he's hilarious, right? Sorry, I think I got something here on my face there. Yeah, I see it now, it's gone. So I decided that since so many people and so many channels are just doing Ozzy stuff, I would do something a little bit different and just talk about metal in general and those three big bands that I think, to me, those are the first bands. Now, which one was the first one? Which one was the founding metal band? Most people would say Black Sabbath's debut album. But I mean, there's a lot of hard rock here, heavy metal. It was back then, it was called heavy metal. Today, you might reclassify it as hard rock. I don't know, you can do what you want. The fact is that was pretty damn heavy, and this album fit in there as well. This one's a really quite heavy album for that time period. The same with Led Zeppelin, not so much this album because this is from the late 70s, but their first album, very heavy, very, very bluesy. To me, that's the element of heavy metal that makes it maybe different than just hard rock, is the bluesy element to it. A lot of people think of these as not really being heavy metal because there's a huge blues influence on these albums from these three bands. Where with real heavy metal, I think you get to Judas Priest, and they just kind of toned down the blues a lot and just went for this real heavy sound, right? So maybe officially, Judas Priest might be the first real metal band. But it's all open discussion. Everybody sees things differently. It's my opinion that these three bands kind of form that nexus of heavy metal, but not necessarily heavy metal themselves. Definitely was ahead of its time because nobody else was doing that. There was a few other bands that were heavy, Led Zeppelin being one of them, Deep Purple being one, but it was the first one that kind of had that dark element to their music. It was heavy, but it had the dark element too, where I don't think you find that as much with Zeppelin or with Deep Purple. So I would say the dark element in Black Sabbath was kind of the element that most metal bands went for later on. Yeah, a lot of people think that Iron Man was a later song. I think primarily because they used it in the movies, the Iron Man movies. But yeah, it was on the first or the second Black Sabbath album, Paranoid. Um, the first time I heard it, it was probably my favorite song on the album. But over the years, it's been played so much in that and Paranoid that most of the rest of the stuff on the album I like to listen to more. Now, my entrance into Led Zeppelin was roughly around the same time period as Black Sabbath, maybe a little bit later, not much later though. My first album, of course, by Led Zeppelin was In Through the Outdoor, but I did not get it initially when it first came out. Um, we had tickets to go see Led Zeppelin in Montreal, but we never went because of John Bonham's death. So returned the tickets and got our money back. And I think I might have bought this album with it. But maybe, probably not, because I think I didn't get this till 1980. So it was maybe 7 or 8 months old when I got it. So perhaps I didn't. Maybe I just bought it as a separate entity. I don't really remember. I had my first Sabbath album, Heaven and Hell, first. Then I got into the outdoor, but Deep Purple I got much later in the much got into them much later. Probably didn't get into them until I would say in the early 2000s. I'd heard stuff by them, of course, and we talked about them here and there. And I heard songs I was familiar with, like Smoke on the Water and Hush and that kind of stuff, but never had an album by them until probably, I would say, I guess probably in the early 2000s around the birth of my daughter. And I think that's when I got my first Deep Purple album. And it wasn't even, I don't even think it was a studio album. I think it was a live album because I remember listening to it, and I was ran out of albums to listen to, so I was listening to that, and I thought, well, I don't really like Deep Purple, but I'll play this, and then I started getting into them. So for Deep Purple, much later start for me than the other two. First time I heard Sabbath, I was probably, I'm trying to think. This is 73, so I think it was about 8 or 9. My friend had a phono player at his house, just one of those little pop-up phono players or record players as we called them in the day, and he had this uh, Mattel KTEL, I think it was KTEL album, and we put it on, and it had a perfect purple label in the middle of it, and it was all basically hard rock stuff from the 70s. And one of the songs on there, of course, was Paranoid. There was April Wine's Ooh What a Night was on there as well. So we like those two songs a lot. And we didn't know that they were metal. We just knew they were heavy and we liked them and we wanted to listen to more. But of course, we had no money, so that never didn't materialize for another 7 or 8 years, I think. But that's kind of my beginning of my metal turn. I never think metal was the top genre for me. It never was. It was in the top two, and then it was out, and then hard rock and prog were the big things, and then hard rock was out, and metal was back in. But it was always a genre that I listened to quite a bit. So I knew, even though I was doing primarily prog here, so I'm just going to move this over a bit. that I was going to continue doing progressive rock as my main theme, but I still wanted to have some metal in there. And I wanted to get into the more modern metal because I felt like I was kind of under the 8 ball there. No, those songs, Iron Man didn't for me materialize till the 1980s because I never had the album. We just had that one K-Tel album, and it only had Paranoid on it, so that's where it started. But that was the only Black Sabbath song I knew for probably 7 or 8 years till I bought Heaven and Hell, and then I went back, and one afternoon I was at I think it was Sam the Record Man's on Yonge Street in Toronto, and they had all the Sabbath stuff on sale, and I bought 5 albums that day, I believe, the first 5 in their discography. And that's when I started really getting into Ozzy, because shortly after I got those albums, I got I think this is how it worked. Shortly after that purchase, Ozzy came out in his solo stuff, which I'm trying to remember if it was a late 80s or mid 80s. It might have been like the summer of 1980. And that's when I bought Blizzard of Oz. And then I was into Ozzy too. And I think there's a very big distinction between Sabbath and Ozzy too, that maybe the obvious, maybe the more general person into heavier stuff might not see the difference. To me, Sabbath had a lot of blues and heavy dark elements to their music. Ozzy had the dark elements, but he didn't have as much of the bluesy sound to his music. It was more straight on metal sound. That's it. That's about it. As far as that's how I got into them. Yeah, no, I don't think I had any of those evil thoughts in me. I just like the heaviness of the music. And early on, I liked the metal sound to music, but later I began to like more of the bluesy elements. So, and then later after that, I kind of liked both a little bit more. This band, at this point in time, the other 2 bands, I've had all of their discs for some time, for most of their stuff for some time. So I've been into them a lot longer and listened to them a lot more. This band is a newer band to me, even though they came from that same time period. And I don't like all of the Purple stuff, but some of it I like a lot. And then some of it I'm kind of not into at all. So I'm not really sure why that is the case, but it's the truth. And I guess it's the same with Sabbath in a way, like the early Sabbath, the Dio era, the Gillan era, I liked a lot, but I've never gone forward other than Dehumanizer and this one, which is the last one they did, 13, but this has Ozzy on it. But that stuff by Tony Martin, I never really got into it, but I guess it's time to maybe give it a try as well. Where with Deep Purple had so many different marks, like Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, lots of different changes to their music. So they are the one with the most versatile music of the 3 bands, mostly because of the constant change of lineups, where Sabbath had that run of pretty solid stuff by Ozzy, the Ozzy era, and then the Dio era was not as long, but still impactful. And then the one-off with Gillan, and then that was it for me. But with Deep Purple, they had different eras, and quite a few of them albums with them there, and are actually the only one, of course, of the 3 that are still active. With Led Zeppelin, they just had the one run. It was a straight run from 1969 through to 79 with their death, and then I guess you could throw Coda in there too, but. So they were basically the same 4 musicians playing the same music or some variation of that music over that 10 years. So they're a little bit different as well. I don't know that you could mix any of these 3 bands together. Despite their obvious connections, they're all very different sounding. I don't think there's a marriage there. Some people think there could be a marriage between Deep Purple and Black Sabbath, but they tried that, was one off. Didn't really sound like Sabbath or Deep Purple, really. Had a little bit of both elements going on there. But I enjoyed that album. I wish they'd done at least a second one. That maybe they could have done the production better or whatever, but a second album by that group would have been fantastic. So since Ozzy's passing, I have said this before, they were one of the few bands that could actually do an album with all four of the original members. But now that he's passed, they are no longer on that card. There's a few other bands that come to mind like that, but they're not metal bands like Kiss. I wouldn't call Kiss a metal band even in the remotest times. To me, they're just a hard rock glam band. Same with Cheap Trick. They're kind of a glam band in some ways. They have that kind of unserious element to their music. They could do a album with all four of the originals too, but there's very few bands like that can do that anymore. And it's getting to that point where a lot of people are passing on. Doesn't make me feel great because I'm getting closer to my turn, right? I've seen a lot of stuff about Ozzy on the YouTube channel over the last few days since his passing, and I've not actually seen anybody other than maybe Neil Peart get almost as much attention. Maybe Eddie Van Halen, but I think Ozzy got more attention than both of them. And I think he's a kind of beloved character because of his sense of humor and the way he is. Yeah, I never seen Kiss as a heavy metal band. I don't even think, to be honest, I don't really think they wanted to be a heavy metal band. They considered themselves a rock and roll band, kind of the same as AC/DC. A lot of people, will refer to AC/DC as a metal band, but they don't see themselves that way. They see themselves as a hard rock band, and definitely Kiss. I don't think they saw themselves as a heavy metal band. They were big fans of Kiss, big fans of the Beatles. At least Gene Simmons was, and they wanted to be like the Beatles. They kind of set themselves up that way. They wanted all four members to sing. They wanted them to do different songs. They definitely saw themselves as more of a Beatle clone than they saw themselves as a metal band. There's no doubt about that to me. Welcome to the show too, Ben. Nice to see you. Yeah, it's lighter. The glam bands, I don't think, seen themselves as heavy metal. They saw themselves as entertainers first, and then as rock bands. You look at bands like the Sweet, maybe the New York Dolls, even Alice Cooper. It's more of the show. It's the show rather than the actual music. I don't think Alice Cooper, he definitely didn't see himself as a metal guy. Some of their early albums are really great albums, but they're definitely hard rock and all contribute. And I think yet Kiss is the same. The music they put out was a venue for them to do their show, which is what they really wanted to. Yeah, for me, Cheap Trick is not a metal band. They're kind of very similar to AC/DC. They have a rock and roll band outlook on things, and they have that kind of 1950-ish element to their music. They saw themselves as a rock and roll band, as an extension of those 50s bands. Yeah, well, Sabbath is gone now, and I kind of, after they did that concert together, and I saw Ozzy's condition, up until I saw the concert, the little bits that I saw of the concert and his condition, I thought, if they're going to do this and they've had such success at it, like so many people wanted to see it, I could see them maybe not touring because of their age and stuff, but maybe put out another album. I kind of had a little bit of hope, but once I saw his condition and how he was, I just thought, I don't think he's going to be able to do it again. So that one-off show was kind of his Hail Mary, I guess, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, you're right on, Ben. He was definitely. Once I saw him in that chair, I knew it was over. This was a one-off. It's not. It's not. It was never going to be like, say, a Motley Crue or Guns N' Roses. We're done, and then 2 weeks later we're back, and then we're done, and then 2 weeks later we're back. So it was never going to be like that. This was. I don't know if they actually set it up this way or knew that this was going to happen, but. Yeah, they. I just knew that maybe they thought, well, we should do something with him now while we can, because maybe he won't last forever. And I don't think it was like, well, we better get this in right now because he's going to be gone shortly. I never thought that was the case. I think they just knew that he wasn't going to be well much longer. If they were going to do anything together, they better do it sooner than later. I didn't see the Jack Black thing. No, there's so many tributes out there to Ozzy. I could have spent all day watching them. I just picked the ones that I wanted to watch, and so I stuck with the ones I normally watch, the shows I normally watch. Yeah, and now the Hulk Hogan is done. I did watch something on Hulk Hogan today. It was his first appearance on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, which I had seen a long time ago, and it was hilarious. I liked it. Yep, Chuck Mangione gone now as well. So it was a week for people passing away, and the I think it was the bass player for Golden Earring. I don't know. I think it was the bass player, but he could have been something else in the band. But I think he was the bass player, and he passed this week. I don't even remember his name, but I seen a couple tributes to him as well. I think he passed the same day actually as Ozzy, if I'm wrong. I think he did, but I don't know for sure. But when I saw I was at work, and I sometimes when I'm driving at work, I'll turn on the radio station to get a kind of an update on. There's one particular case I've been following in the States, and they weren't talking about that. They were playing an Ozzy song on the radio. Why are they playing Ozzy here on this channel? They never play Ozzy. And about 20 seconds into the song, I was thinking, I bet you he passed away. And sure enough, that's how I got it. So I was a little bit in shock at first about it. Yeah, I thought it was the bass player. And I apologize. Yeah, George Humans. I didn't know that name. I saw the name, and I knew when I saw the name, I knew he was with Golden Earring. I just wasn't sure what instrument it was he played. I thought it was probably the bass. Yeah, he was one of the originals of Golden Earring. So you're going back like. This is the other thing I discovered since I was on this channel. I used to think Golden Earring was a 70s band that put out about 3 or 4 albums, and that was it. Clearly, I was largely mistaken by that. When I started checking out their discography, I couldn't believe how large it was, like 27 albums, and they started in the early 60s. So they've been around for a long time. They just only had those 2 big hits, and the rest of the stuff was very different in a lot of ways, which isn't all that uncommon. A lot of bands have these big hits that doesn't really sound much like their discography at all. Yeah, a lot of people like them. I've listened to maybe a half dozen of their albums now, and I like them too. They're just, for some reason, we don't get much of that used Golden Earring stuff, so I haven't been able to get any. Not that I haven't wanted to. I look for them all the time. They're one of the bands I'd like to get a few of their albums to get it going, but I just never see any. And as you know, I'm not a big fan of buying online, but maybe that might change someday too. I don't think I'll do one to George Yeoman. To be honest with you, I don't know enough about him. He's not somebody I ever followed until he died. I didn't even know that. I knew his name. I'd seen it on the album cup, on the album credits and stuff, but I didn't know who he was from Adam. And I don't want to just do a tribute to somebody I don't even know the guy. Doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I did not know that they had been around so long. It wasn't until Ben started giving me albums by them that when I started checking to find out what this when the album was released and stuff, then I realized, holy mackerel, I didn't know they had so many albums. And I know that they weren't originally called Golden Earring, that they were Golden Earrings, I think it was originally. And some of their albums were a little bit different. Their earlier albums were different than some of their later albums, but I don't know too much about them. I did see Ozzy. Saw Ozzy in concert in 19. I'm gonna say 82. Yeah, it must have been 82 because it was the Diary of a Madman tour, and the reason I remember that is because I bought the shirt while I was there, and I had that shirt for a long time. It was one of those shirts that were popular at that time, so it was like a t-shirt but with the long sleeves to about here on you, black sleeves, and I had that t-shirt for a long time. I think I wore it out. I think I wore it till it just fell apart. I didn't get to meet him. No, I did not get to meet him. We're getting close to the stage. That could have been the concert. So one of the concerts I went to with my friend, we were sitting. I don't know, probably it was in Maple Leaf Gardens. So I think the setup was at the right. The Sabbath stage is on the right end or the far eastern end of the facility, if you're familiar with it, and maybe you're not. But so the facility was an oval because it was Maple Leaf Gardens, and then at one end, the left, I guess it would be the right end if you're facing east. They had their stage set up, and then they had the where the ice would be was all the floor, and then you had the seating around it. I was probably about halfway up in the seating, so what we would call the blues section in Maple Leaf Gardens. And we were sitting there watching it, and then my friend had to go to the washroom, so he got by and went by, and while he was away, the concert was going on, and I was watching the concert. And I saw the guy beside me, his hand flashing, so I didn't know what was going on. So I looked at him. I thought that's weird. And then when my friend came back, I said, "This guy's up to something. I don't know what it is though." So when his hand moved again, I quickly looked, and he had pulled open his coat. It must have been in the fall we were there, and he had a line of darts in his coat, and he and like a couple were missing. I saw that, so I started watching, and he was throwing these darts at people on the main floor. I don't think they had the points in them though. I think he had sawed the points off and were just so they just had the metal part. So I said to my friend, "Can you believe this guy? He's out of his mind." So we went. My friend went again and told the usher what we had saw, and next thing I know, that guy was out of there. Yeah, it was a really weird thing, and I believe that was at the Ozzy concert that happened at. Now, you know what? I used to keep all those kind of things in a box, and then when I moved out, I had I don't know, for some reason I was cleaning my stuff out, and I said, I don't know why I'm keeping these tickets to fade it and stuff, so I just tossed them all of the ones I had. I wish I kept them now, but I was a kid. I didn't know any better. I didn't think they were going to be important, so I didn't keep them. No, this is just your good old uh, food basics water. It's me. I'm not, about 99% drinking water. On occasion, I do drink smoothies, and on the rarer occasion, I drink tea. But basically, I'm a water boy, as they say. Basically, I have this here because if I'm doing a show like this where I'm talking, I dry out real quick, and then once my voice dries out, it gets cracky and I can't make up anything. Yeah, not a good man. Yeah, Ben, that was not a good, another, not a, they had a lot of these in the 70s and 80s where they put these bands together on tickets that were nothing alike. I can't see how anybody would thought that Gentle Giant and Black Sabbath was a good combo. The poor guys in Gentle Giant, they got booed and everything from the Sabbath fans. They didn't know what this was. They weren't interested in that. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? Yeah, probably could have happened, but when you're a kid, you don't think about stuff like that. You don't think that that's going to be worth anything in years, because in that time period there was no internet. There's no, I didn't even, it wasn't even something that was in my brain that would ever exist, right? And the internet has brought a lot of these classic things to light where people start saving stuff because of that. But prior, back then, nobody thought about that. I never thought about that. Baseball cards a little bit maybe, but even that didn't start until, to me, in the 80s. Yeah, I wasn't actually talking about any particular albums today. I just picked one from each of the bands so that I could represent them. All three of these bands, I think, are great bands. All of them have like a lot of really good albums, no doubt about it. Yeah, and that's exactly why they were put together, Ben, because they were under the same label. How many times, like, you look at Rush and Max Webster, they don't sound anything alike. There's nothing, there's no commonality between the two as far as the sound goes. Yet they did a song together, but they always, Max Webster always was one of the backup bands for Rush, yet they don't sound anything alike. I wouldn't call Max Webster a progressive rock band. Some people might. I don't. I think of them as a kind of a band like Styx. They play a lot of different styles and they do them all well, but they all sound like Max Webster, right? Yeah, and there's the same. Like there was a concert or a series of concerts put together with Leonard Skinner and Queen on the same label, and the Skinner fans couldn't stand Queen, and you can understand why. They don't sound anything alike. Like, and it must have, to me, it could have been a label issue. I'm not sure if they were on the same label or not, but that's, I think, why some of these bands, because I seen Triumph at the Mistake by the Lake, with Triumph and Teenage Head, and these are two bands that sound nothing alike, and they don't belong together at all. But there's a lot of that, and usually the headlining band, whoever that was the main draw, so people were going to see them, and the other band was a backup band. And if they don't sound anything like them, they're going to get booed off the stage. Yeah, I didn't go to a lot of concerts. My concert stretch for a very brief period. I think I saw one concert in 76, and then I didn't see another one until 1980. And then I've probably seen concerts from 1980 through 84. And then I saw one off when I was in New Zealand, only because everybody I was with went to this Elton John concert, which was probably the worst one I ever seen. Who did it better? The EP? I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, I took it off because I realized when I put that out there, I had put it together quickly. I hadn't had time to do it properly. And I realized I didn't know much about the background of the song or the musicians in it. And I think it came across as just made up crap. So I decided it wasn't worth having. And I knew when I put it out, I felt that way. And then somebody made a comment, so I removed it. So what I'm going to do is at some point, we'll redo that as, and like 1 week won't put out a new one. We'll just redo that when I have an actual time to do it. That's I don't like putting stuff out that I don't know at least something about. Otherwise, it just sounds like I'm just putting something out for the sake of putting it out. So that's what happened to that, Ben. Queen, to me, Queen is like Styx, or what was the other band I mentioned earlier? Can't remember. To me, Queen is like Styx. They're a band that plays a multitude of different styles of music. It would make sense when you think about Bohemian Rhapsody. What is a rhapsody? It's a bunch of different sounds put together. And to me, that's what Queen is. They're like Styx that way, a multitude of sounds put together to make a sound, right? So, I would say Styx and Queen are hard rock bands, but you would be right to call them a bunch of different names as well because they have all that sound to their music. There's no doubt about that to me. Yeah, I wouldn't call Queen a heavy metal band, but they have done some pretty heavy stuff. Absolutely. Hey, Wade, welcome to the show. Haven't seen you for a bit. Glad to have you aboard. EP episode? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Ben. Oh, yeah. So you're talking about, yeah, it actually got about 28 views, but even when it was getting views, I was thinking, I didn't feel right when I put it out. I didn't do enough. And I even mentioned it in the video and the one guy come back and said, you don't know what you're talking about. It's terrible. You're just making stuff up. It wasn't that I was making stuff up. I just didn't know anything. And I had said that. I didn't know enough about it. So I was just talking about the song, but I don't know where I went wrong with it. But basically, I just hadn't done enough research on it. So I didn't feel right about it. So I just pulled it. So I told myself last year that I wouldn't put out any episodes at all unless I knew a little bit about what I was talking about. There's no point in putting something on the air if you don't know what you're talking about. Nobody wants to see that. I think Wade, you're 100% right there, and I think a lot of people are confused by that. They think that Ozzy wrote the lyrics and wrote the music. And if you've seen Ozzy, you know he didn't do either of those things. He did nothing of the sort. Ozzy had two great things about him, I think, that set him apart. He was a good singer, didn't have a great voice, but he was a good singer and very distinctive voice and suited Sabbath very well, especially the early stuff that he sang with them. He also was a great frontman stage presence and very entertaining. And he had a bit of a strangeness to him too that drew people in. And he was funny as hell, but I don't think he was the lyricist for any of that stuff. I was told that was Geezer Butler that wrote most of that stuff, but I don't know that either. I'm just assuming that Geezer had maybe something to do with the Sabbath stuff, but maybe not necessarily with the Ozzy stuff. Maybe he had somebody write it. I don't know. You never know these things because a lot of Ozzy's career was orchestrated and put together and controlled and engineered by his wife. She was the big kind of driving force there to get stuff done. So, and yeah, so you don't know if she had somebody hired to write that music or maybe Geezer did write it, and maybe some people out there know the story, but you get a lot of stories that people will say that's the God sent truth of what happened, but they can't produce any evidence. They can only cite what somebody else has said, and that doesn't necessarily make it true. I don't know if they called me out. It was just one guy. He was probably, I'm thinking it was something to do with something I said about Bowie, and I don't know if he called me out on it, but he probably struck a raw nerve with him. I wasn't mad at him or upset. I just thought maybe he had a point and I should just pull it. So I did. Yeah, no, I'm not worried about it, Ben. And I see what you're trying to say. I get that. I fully get that. What you're saying. I just felt for that particular episode, I felt like I wasn't really on the money with it, so I pulled it. But I've said stuff about other bands, and you'll hear me say it even today, like what I was just saying about Ozzy and his music. That doesn't make what I say the God sent truth. It's just my observations and what I think is possibly sounds like it sounds realistic. Like for somebody to say that the Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, the music and the lyrics were written by Ozzy, that seems preposterous to me. So, if you could prove it to me, then I'd have an open mind about it. But just on my observations about Ozzy, I don't think Ozzy created the music or the lyrics for any of that Sabbath or his solo stuff. I think there was somebody else doing the writing, maybe both music and lyrics, or just lyrics and somebody else doing the music. Who knows? Yeah, they do say that, but if it's the asshole of the world, like people always focus, Ben, on the things that are bad. And, there's a lot of bad things about the internet, but there's also a lot of good things, because we would not be doing what we're doing right now and enjoying this format if it wasn't for the internet. That's just a simple fact. So people can say what they want about that. It's a good thing, and it, as long as you use it in a good manner, then it's a positive thing. And if you don't use it in a good manner and you're just using it to vent or take out your frustrations, and a lot of people are not really good with dealing people in the real world, but it's much easier to deal with somebody who you don't have to face, right? It's simple. Okay, let me see if I can understand this question. Okay, Murph, any bands that you get the whole Ozzy Black Sabbath bands? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Yeah, no, I try to be true to myself. Like a lot of people, I've had guys say, "Well, you should edit your videos," and then if you're a person that edits your videos, you can see where the chops are, and people get mad at you. Like, why are you editing it out? Like I don't like to edit. You're gonna get me the way I am. If you don't like what you see, then you're not gonna watch me. That's just the way it is. I'm not gonna pander and be something to people because that's what they want. I'm just a guy who started this channel, and if you go back and you look at my introduction, you'll know this. I wanted to promote rock music because rock music used to get promoted by magazines and radio, but radio and magazines don't really promote it anymore, because they promote most of the music that's promoted now is all the hip hop and rap and all that pop and diva music that's out now, which it doesn't, to me, it does, it's like a bucket full of holes. It doesn't hold anything. This stuff is much more substantial to me. And I wanted to promote these bands. A lot of these bands never even got credit for anything because of their record labels either didn't promote them well, or didn't or tried to take advantage of them. In some cases, the bands went for years where they couldn't even make music because of labels blocking them and stuff. It's got to be damn frustrating. So, I'm trying to give them an opening here to be a little bit more upfront. People can see them. Gentle Giant is a fine band, one of the greatest bands ever. Yet they're not going to. The average person doesn't know who they are. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I like to be front and center. This is an avenue for me to explore music. I get more out of what you guys say than what I get out of what I say. That's how I learn, because I don't read rock documentaries as much as other people. I don't read the books. Some of the books I've read through, and some of the stuff I found interesting. But the truth of the matter is that, unless you're going to go through and fact check everything that the person says, you don't know for fact that maybe it's just their opinion. So I like people's opinion. I'm not a big in depth into a personal life of any particular rock musician. Some of them I know more than others because I enjoy their music more, so I see more of them. But generally speaking, I don't really care if Ted Nugent is a lunatic and is out there shooting things or whatever it is he's doing. I like his music. That's why I do this. Um, oh, there's a lot of bands like Sabbath. Um, I would say Sabbath is one of the most, I wouldn't say copied, but influential rock bands in history. Like so many bands enjoyed their music and try to incorporate it into their own music. And I can understand why. Their music was very good and very catchy and had a lot of energy to it. It was heavy as hell, and I liked heavy stuff. And Ozzy's voice was keen on that. And I think Dio did a great job too. I'm a huge fan of Dio. He's one of my favorite vocalists. Um, but when and I argued with somebody once about this, that I prefer him over Ozzy, and they got mad at me. And later I can understand why they got mad at me, because they were huge Ozzy fans, and for me to say that Dio was a better vocalist pissed them right off. I'm sorry to say, but that's what happened. Yeah, it didn't. And you know what? The very thing you just said, Grandizer, you have to put that aside, because there's obviously other channels out here with other people creating and doing the same thing as I'm doing, or doing other stuff that are better at this than me. That doesn't mean that I'm not relative, or not of interest to some people. Maybe I do things better in some ways, maybe not as another. Maybe I don't know as much as them, but maybe I have a unique perspective on certain bands that other people don't. And I enjoy other people's content too, maybe more than my own, really. Um, I my One of my problems is, and I'll take full responsibility for this, is I have rarely, if ever, watched one of my own videos. It's and it isn't that I think that it's bad. I don't think it's bad, or I wouldn't be doing it. I think that I don't do it because I'm not really comfortable with watching myself. It seems kind of funny to me to watch yourself, so I just don't do it, right? There's a guy from The Walking Dead, and maybe people have seen this show. Um, the guy that played the main character, he never seen a single episode that he was involved with. And I fully get that. I know exactly why he doesn't want to do that. Yeah, you're on the show doing what you're doing now, which is making this show a show. If nobody came on here and said anything, then it wouldn't be worth watching, right? You know. Yeah, it's it's an influence. And Black Sabbath is, and the word inspired is a good word here. Black Sabbath inspired a lot of people to do what they're doing. Now, some people have done exactly what they've done. Other people have taken elements of what they've done and made it part of their music and done it. And I'm sure that if you ask a lot of these metal bands out there, I would be very surprised if there's any metal band in the world who is that the general public knows, that aren't influenced by Black Sabbath. I'd be surprised by that. I would be surprised if Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and the Scorpions haven't had some impact on a lot of these bands as well, because they're all metal bands who had distinctive sounds, right? And back in the 70s, there wasn't much to choose from. You've got a lot of hard rock bands, some of them bordering metal, but none of them like a Judas Priest or Black Sabbath, for sure. Yeah, well, I had a beard at the beginning, and I had actually picked out a drawing that I wanted somebody, a friend of mine, somebody important to me, to draw for my channel, and that was going to be my background. They were going to draw that monster, and then the monster had tentacles, and each tentacle was supposed to have an instrument, like a guitar and a bass and a keyboards and a drum set, and the monster would be in the background. It was supposed to be a kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of thing going on there, but the drawing never got done. The person ended up creating all of my background that you see now, which I'm happy with. I like it. It's nothing spectacular, but it suits the channel. And so by then, though, I was already Prog Monster. So, and I don't mind that title. It's fine with me. You know, Jack Burial has his own show, which is the CD Cave, and he likes to have that frog. So I have the frog here, but you can't see it because I've got the camera switched to a different angle. But and he has his little music thing at the beginning. Everybody has a little bit of a creative thing that they want their channel to kind of be a background for them. And so that was supposed to be mine, but it just never materialized. Oh, so that's how you came to know about my channel, is you were looking up an album or something, and my algorithm drew you in. I guess that's what happened. I apologize for that. Yeah, I've become fairly good at analyzing albums now, maybe over analyzing. So I started out being kind of sloppy about it, and then I got a little bit analytical, then too analytical, and now I'm kind of talking about the album in general and then breaking down each song as I see them. That's generally how I do it, because to me, an album is a work of art. It tells a story, collective story, and the songs are the chapters if you're thinking of a book. So you can break the chapters down a little bit, but as to how they apply to the album is how I feel about it. So when you do these radio shows only play this one album, they take it out of context, the song out of context for the album, and people view that song as representing the band, when in actual fact, it isn't. The whole album represents the band. So the reason I did it this way, and maybe this makes sense to some people, maybe it won't make sense, but I've had bands like Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull, the two most notable bands in my discography, who I did not like initially. I didn't like them. And the reason I didn't like them is because of a couple songs that I had associated those songs as being the sound of that band. And then once I got over that and started listening to the albums, I realized that song was just one piece of the album that I didn't necessarily have to like, but that the band was very different sounding than that. So that's why I'm an album fan, because the song could be misleading. Sweet is another band very much like this, where you get a lot of songs on Sweet that are played on the radio, like Fox on the Run and Ballroom Blitz and Wee Willie, and you think that's the way they sound, and that's a good sound. I like that sound, but sometimes you might not like that sound, but you think that's the way the band sounds, so you don't buy the albums because you don't like that sound, right? But in the case of Sweet, those songs are aberrations. They don't sound like that at all. Their music is much heavier and much different than those songs. So that's why I stopped listening to the radio, just for that reason. Plus, you're getting the same stuff over and over again all the time. Yeah, no, I get it. I fully get it. I try to give people an in-depth study on the albums, but I also want to get the flavor of the album to them. So maybe you like what I like, and therefore you're going to listen to what I listen, because you're listening to what I say. And if I tell you I don't like something, you may say, you know what, if he doesn't like it, I probably won't like it either, but I might give it a try and see if he's right. So once you've listened to some of the stuff I've talked about, and I've said something that triggered you, and you listen to it, you say, I do like this. So now you're going to listen to what I say. But if I say something about it you don't like, you may say, well, then I won't waste my time on it. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do there. That's all. But, I highly recommend that if you're not sure about something, you go listen to it. Okay. So Ben, you're saying, what order would you rank these three bands? Well, that's easy for me, because I know what bands I like in the order I like them in. I'm like that, very organized and everything. So this is definitely my favorite of the three bands, not even close. They're part of my elite group. They've been there since 1980. They've never dropped out of the elite group even for a while. And I've liked most of their albums. I probably have more masterpiece albums by them than any other band. So they're easily number one. The other two bands, it varies, but probably historically, that Led Zeppelin would be the next in that order. I love all their albums. I've had a lot more history with them. To me, that one time they were a top 10 band. They've never been higher than 10th. But they never made my elite group. They've just always been short of that. And now they're falling back a little bit behind Iron Maiden and Judas Priest as well. So, yeah, great band, but they're definitely number two. Now, Deep Purple is number three by virtue of not having as long of a time with them as the other two. But they have some stuff, and currently I have one in my playlist that I like a lot. And I've begun to explore their discography in depth. I now have about maybe half a dozen of their albums, which they've got like 20 or more. So I got a long way to go. Maybe by the time I get to the end of the 20th album, they might even be at the top. It's hard to say, right? Some albums will turn you off for whatever reason. I never liked Machine Head. I don't know what it is about the album. It's not that I dislike it. I kind of like it, but it doesn't have the same impact as this or Fireball for me. So they're number three by virtue of not having followed them as long as the others. So I hope that kind of explains it. Yeah, I think I did. I did do that. I did a monthly series. I got away from the monthly series a few years ago, just because of the time consumption, and I got away from them because I wanted to do a lot of these mini series, which I was doing. And but then I decided, you know what? If I do them every month, there's a couple people that watch that show religiously. They may not watch everything I do, but they watch that morning 2.5 or 3 or 5, as much as 5 minutes. I try to keep them a little short. I figure, maybe the guy's getting ready for work. He just wants to watch a 2 or 3 minute video, and then he watches that. And it reminds him of an album that he has, or he wants to put his own in there. There's one particular guy that comes to mind, and that's the only show he watches, but he is on there every single day, follows me like clockwork. So when I'm doing these, I'm thinking of him too while I'm doing them. Okay, so next, the Sweet are brilliant. Yeah, the Sweet are a band that there's two things about the Sweet. So the first thing is that they're two different bands. So you've got the radio band, and then you've got the Deep Cuts band, and they're very different sounding. The other thing about them is that their albums are kind of, I don't find them as organized as some bands. Like some bands put out this album that sounds this way, the next album sounds this way, and they just keep moving forward, progressing. The Sweet are kind of different in that. Their albums seem to be a little bit disjointed, and sometimes they repeat songs on the same on the albums. Atomic Rooster's like that too. Their albums are kind of, I don't know how to explain it any better than that, but I like the Sweet a lot. I think they're a great band. Been a little bit difficult finding some of their stuff for a reasonable price. I did see one the other day, and I want it, and I picked it up, and I was gonna buy it, and then I saw something else that I wanted more, and so I didn't choose them. And that used to happen a lot when I can't afford to buy them like I have been over the last few months. But yeah, so I decided against it. But it's definitely at top of the list of one of the albums I want to get. Yeah, I may do something on glam rock bands. I was never a huge glam rock band fan, though. I will admit, I never was a big fan of them, other than Kiss. The Sweet came later. I'm sure there's others that, like, I don't like Motley Crue at all. I never liked them, maybe a little bit, and the first album, and I just no. So we'll just go on from there. We won't say much more about that. Yeah, they don't seem to get as much airplay, but this happens too. Like if you look at the way things go, for a long time there, vinyl was a big thing. people were like really, they made a huge comeback, and now it's faded a bit, and now the CDs seem to be making comeback. So maybe these glam bands will make a comeback too. No, I did not see him on his own. Sorry, I didn't see him with Sabbath. I saw Black Sabbath with Dio. I saw Dio by himself. I saw Ozzy by himself. I saw Ian Gillan with Black Sabbath. So I've seen some combinations, but I've not seen Black Sabbath with Ozzy Osbourne. I was too young when they were together. Yeah, Ben, I fully get what you're saying. You know, you've only got 10 spots and you got 25 bands and you try to squeeze them all in there. So you end up with 3 number ones and 3 number twos and 3 number threes. And yeah, I fully get that. I see this all the time. You know, people, they're making their top 25. Oh shit, I forgot this guy. Oh, I got to put this guy in there. Pretty soon they get a top 50, you know? Yeah, I don't know what it is with us, with Canadians, with frogs, but that was what drew me to CD Cave, was his frogs. And then I liked what he had to say. I like his setup and his record collection. I don't think his music style is similar to mine, although he does like some bands. Like, I think the two of us are both huge Styx fans. I think he's a bigger Styx fan than me, but we both love Styx. I think he likes a lot of stuff I like, but he likes a lot of stuff outside what I like. And I think I like a lot of stuff outside what he likes as well. But yeah. Le Frog, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, some people really like Motley Crue's early stuff. My problem with Motley Crue is probably the same problem I have with U2 and Guns N' Roses. I just don't like them, if that makes any sense. It's like if you were to look at my collection of favorite albums, Rush should not be my favorite band if you're just going by that. If you're just going by favorite albums, they should be maybe 4th or 5th. But I like them. It's them that I like, and their music I like too. But it's a combination of both. Where with with Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue and the U2, I don't really like them as people. U2 gets a little bit more of a leniency from me because I like their music. I do like some of their music, not all of it, but I like some of it. But I just don't like them as performers. Yeah, you're in the South, though, what I would call a South, and they just never were into those glam bands. It was never more evident to me when you saw Queen backing up Leonard Skinner and how much abuse they took. It was nothing about Queen. Queen is a great rock band, but they are not received well. Where Leonard Skinner fans would never be mixed up with Queen fans, in my opinion. Yeah, the only problem, I never really liked LPs because they're bulky, and I don't know, maybe my experience with them as a kid is they were always warped. Now I know that you can fix the warp. There's ways to fix the warp, and they would get scratched easy, and then you had to have a top line phono player, which we would call record player in the day, and there wasn't a lot of great ones out there. And in our case, we had a crappy one, and then I had a crappy one, and then my sister had a crappy one. So we had 3 crappy ones, none of them worth a hill of beans. So my vinyl experience wasn't that great. Once I started the CD collection, there's a lot of obvious good things about CDs. They're easier to keep. They don't take up as much space. I think the sound is better at times. Storing them is good. They're easy to travel with. There's a lot of good things about them, and they're cheaper too. And that's not by any means a bad thing. You'll get good money for your LP collection if it's in good condition, Ben. No doubt about that. Yeah, I don't know if I know that Goldfrapp. I don't even know if I've heard of them before. Pretty sure I haven't. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they were more later. The later the bands are, the less I know about them. Unless they came out in the last 5 or 10 years, then I know a little bit more about them because I started probably in 2014 or 15. I started gaining a real interest in rock again. That's when I kind of resurfaced. Before that, I had my periods. There was a period in the 90s that I listened to a lot, and then there was another period in the early part of like 2001, 2002, 2003 when I was working two jobs and I was listening to a lot then, and then again maybe a little later in the decade, and then once it got to 2014, that's when I started coming alive again, and it's really pushing it. And of course, since the channel, you can see it's exploded here. I've become mesmerized, to put it mildly. I know that song. I don't know it that well. Is that the one on Physical Graffiti, Boogie with Stu? Is that on Physical Graffiti? There's a few songs on. I'm not. Physical Graffiti is the last Led Zeppelin album I bought, and I'm still not 100% familiar with it. There's some of the tracks the first album of the two I've really listened to a lot. Second one, not so much. So maybe if it's on that, then that makes a little bit of a sense to me. Oh, you don't have any? So do you do most? Wait, do you do most of your stuff via the internet? Do you have like a downloaded albums that way? Is that how you work it? Yeah, I bet you those LP box sets are worth a ton, man. I'm sure they are, especially if they're in good condition. I have a monstrous size comic book collection, and some of my comic books are worth a fortune, but I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm going to save it, and then when I pass, I'll leave instructions for my daughter if she wants to sell it, where to sell it, and that kind of stuff. But she's very good at that kind of thing. She'll find her own way. She won't need my help. And that I'm hoping there's enough money in my comic book collection that she might be able to put towards a down payment on a home. That's what I'm hoping. So you started collecting in 1990. My vinyl collection went to my sister. I didn't have a huge amount at the time, maybe 320 albums, which for me was a lot. She got that whole collection when I left home in 1985. So I haven't owned a vinyl album since then. Yeah, I thought it was on Physical Graffiti. I remember seeing that title and I'm thinking it's got to be on Physical Graffiti because it's the one that and maybe The Presence are the two albums I probably have the least uh, cognitive grasp on where I am with them. But those two, yeah, very good. That's it. That's Physical Graffiti is an album. As soon as I got it, I knew I was going to like it a lot. And I think the reason I never got it for so long is because it was a double album. I wasn't big on double albums. Other than Kiss Alive, I didn't own any double albums for a long time. And if you look at my discographies, if you look at how I rank the albums from my discography, almost always the double albums are lower down than the upper ones. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe my attention span is low. I don't know. Did you lose audio? You lost audio. You know what? The mic is way over here, and that could be part of it. Maybe that's better there. I don't know why. Did I move the mic? I must have moved the mic and not realized it. I apologize if you're not hearing, if you haven't been hearing me, because I just realized the mic was over there, and I may have moved it, or I might have forgot to put it there in the first place. Either one or the other. But I thought I put it here when I opened up. So I'm thinking when I had the CDs here, I may have moved it for some reason, forgetting that I'm mic'd. Yeah. Well, I won't win any awards for brain power as far as memory goes. What was your first Triumph album that you had? Curious. Oh, yeah. I used to do that too, Ben. And I've done this. I've gone into stores, seen an album with a great cover, or don't know anything about the band, and buy it. And that happened. I bought a country album, and I didn't even know it was country until I got it home. But I liked the album cover, and I listened to the music. I thought, "Oh my God, this is terrible." Doesn't happen very often. Usually, I like what's on the album too. Yeah, I hope that's better for you, Grandizer. I think maybe it was my fault because I just realized the mic. I looked as soon as you said it, I looked. Oh, the mic's over there. What's it doing over there? Allied Forces. Yeah, that's a good one to start with. That's probably someday I'll be ranking my Triumph albums, and that's probably going to be in the top two or three, anyways. Great album. I saw them on that tour. I think I saw them on the Progressions of Power and the Allied Forces tour. Those are the two tours I saw them. They were back-to-back years they came. The first one at the Gardens, the Progressions of Power, and then the second one, Allied Forces at the CNE Grandstand. That's the one with Teenage Head as the backup band. And I went with a guy from work. It was one of the rare concerts where I didn't go with my best friend. I think almost all the stuff I've seen live was with him, except for this one with this guy I went with. And he had a camera. He got some absolutely killer shots of them on stage. He gave me one. It was a nice, like, screen size picture of them playing. It was fantastic. I looked for it in recent years to put it up on the wall here, and I just don't know where it went. But I've never been great at keeping things that move so many times in my life. Who the hell knows where it is now? So those are my, those are the three bands tonight, which, the point of doing this isn't to talk so much about the three bands, but to generate rock music talking. And I've learned quite a bit here tonight too. It's been quite hot too. We've had some serious heat in this last couple of days. So, and I have to keep the window closed because they're redoing the surface of the parking garage in the side on my side here, like doing the whole thing. And so there's dust everywhere. So you have to keep the windows closed or it's just retarded. Yeah, this is I decided to do a metal show for those of you who are wondering why did he get into metal when this is a prog channel. Well, I have a prog show, Into the Prog Verse. That's my main focus. So, but I do like metal and I do like hard rock. Those are probably the next two genres that I like. So I wanted to do something for them, but not overdo it. So I thought I'll do a metal channel where we can talk about heavy metal and bands that are in the heavy metal. And I said, you know what, I'll do a ranking show too with the hard rock, and I'll rank all of the favorite hard rock albums in some kind of. So I did the Kiss one last week, which was my first one. I think the time slot might not have worked out too well. So what I'm going to do is alternate the two shows. So you'll have metal one week here on Thursday night, and then you'll have the 70s hard rock ranking show on the other night, so that we have a little bit of a variety, because I can't do too many lives. I'm too busy and too tired. Most time I'm getting that way now, and I got baseball still to check out. So I'll be leaving soon. But I also like folk music a lot, like folk rock. Not folk music so much by itself, but with a bit of a rock element to it. Bands like Simon and Garfunkel come to mind, and the Buffalo Springfield, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Some bands that have some folky element to their music. I don't know what it is about folk music. One of my favorite albums, Songs from the Wood, has a lot of that folky element to it. And I don't know, there's something about that element that I like quite a bit. And I do like some new wave and some pop and stuff, but I think the pop element has kind of disappeared over the years, but maybe it's coming back a bit. I've recently bought some pop albums. I have a fairly good list of albums, a mix of albums for this week's or next week's new albums to be released. that will come out the last day of the month. But I've got about 13 albums, and there's a bit of a mix of a lot of that stuff there. Oh, Osric, are you talking about? Are you talking about Osric Tentacles, the space rock kind of psychedelic rock band, or are you talking about the Osmonds band with the hard rock stuff on it? Did they do a song called Wild Horses, I think was the name of it, by the Osmond brothers? It's completely as far out in left field from their music as you can get. So you picture a kind of boy band, but a 70s boy band, which was what the Osmonds were. They were a boy band in the same kind of likes as most boy bands are, a bunch of brothers or a bunch of guys singing vocally. And then in the case of the Osmonds, a couple of them played instruments too, but and then they did this kind of like heavy Zeppelin like song. It's just mind blowing. Yeah, so if you're I'll leave so if you're looking to check that out, it was the Osmond brothers, and I think it's spelled Osmond, like Osmond, not Osmond, Osmond. And then the song I think is called Wild Horses. I'm sure Ben knows this. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll write it down. I forgot I can type on my computer. I don't have to just talk. So it's the Osmonds. It's the name of the group. And the song is, I believe, Wild Horses. The Osmonds, Wild Horses. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny, but if you knew if you listen to the other Osmond stuff, you'll know as soon as you listen to the other stuff and you listen to this, you'll say it's the same band. But they were huge. People don't know this, but they were huge. They were huge fans of Led Zeppelin. You know, there's a lot of people out there, musicians out there singing stuff that you don't care for. You think it's garbage and you don't like it. It's too this or too that. And then you find out they're influenced by bands like Led Zeppelin. You say, where is the influence here? Right? But a lot of these bands, they play. Yeah, you're right, Ben. It's Crazy Horses. I said Wild Horses, right? That's I think that's a Rolling Stone song actually. So it's Crazy Horses. If you're looking at this, Wade, you'll see he's wrote Crazy Horses. That's the name of the song. The band is called the Osmond Brothers. They were around at the same time as the Jackson 5. They were kind of competitors, the two of them. Very similar sounding in a lot of ways. And I liked that early, I like the early Jackson 5 stuff. Not so much the Osmond stuff, but this particular song, fantastic. It's great. Well worth it. Anyways, gentlemen, I do appreciate you coming on my channel. It's great. We've had a good discussion. I tried to answer everybody's questions as they put them in order that they did. Didn't try to leave anything out. I'm good at that. I like to answer the stuff. People leave a comment in my section below. I try to answer it, or I try to, at least acknowledge it, which is good too. Yeah, give it or you can just punch in the Osmond Brothers and Crazy Horses on the internet and you'll get it right away. I don't think they did anything else like that. I could be wrong, but I don't think they did. It was just a one-off. And they were big fans of Led Zeppelin. That's the only two things I knew about it. Yeah, take care, Ben. Thanks for coming on. We'll be back for those of you who watch the channel. I'll be back with Into the Progverse this weekend. And what did I schedule for this weekend's? Actually, I haven't picked one yet. I did my Styx collection last week, and I hadn't come up with a topic for this week because I've been so busy. But I'm going to try and do that after when I do this one too. I'll come up with my 2 topics for the live stuff for next week. This one I put up late, so I'll try to put that up a little bit earlier. And I thank you, Wade. I thank you, Ben, and I thank you, Grandizer, for coming on the channel. And if I missed anybody else, then I thank you as well. And thanks, guys, for coming up and showing up and putting out and talking about stuff. And And remember, Hulk Hogan passed away today too. So think of him when you're doing stuff. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon. I'm looking forward to next week's Into the Progverse. Next week's the Prog Seat on Sea of Tranquility. It's my favorite, probably my favorite show on the internet, and get a lot of stuff from that. So if you haven't checked that out, give that a check out as well. So take care, everybody. We'll see you soon, and have a good night. And thanks for coming out. Take care and goodbye.